Well, if you've always been a big fan of the looks and styling of the Volvo XC90 but wanted something a little more affordable and a little less cumbersome to drive in the city, then the XC60 really is the car for you. But the big question is it a better alternative to established German rivals at this price point? We'll find out on the show today. Well, as soon as you enter the cabin of the XC60, you'll realize that it feels like a miniature version of the XC90's cabin because a lot of the switchgear and a lot of the materials are the same. You get the same iPad-like touchscreen over here for the infotainment system, and it really is a nice and intuitive system to use. Now, it is a minimalistic looking cabin in terms of the design and the layout, but in terms of luxury and opulence, it is right up there with the best, and the perceived quality levels are phenomenal as well. The top of the dashboard, the top of the door pads here, as well as the lower end of the center console are really bolted together very well, and all the switchgear, because it is borrowed from the XC90, really has a nice and tactile feel. So yes, in terms of overall luxury and opulence, the XC60 gets full marks in my book. Now, in terms of variants, there's only one version which goes on sale, and it is a completely loaded version. You get all the bells and whistles in terms of safety as well as comfort features. You get city safety, lane avoidance, as well as a lot of other paraphernalia, and of course you can go out to our website and check them out. But I have to make a special mention of the Bowers and Wilkins system over here because it is a phenomenal system in terms of the sound quality, and it has 15 speakers inside this car's cabin. Unlike some of the rivals which have only 10 or 11 speakers, this one gets 15 speakers. And if you are an audiophile, then you should definitely go to a Volvo dealership just to check out the stereo on the XC60. Well, another thing which needs special mention are these seats. They're the best in the business. In fact, they're definitely ahead of the other German rivals on sale. Not only do they offer you very good cushioning and support, but they're also very relaxing to sit in. In fact, if you sit in this car on that long highway trip all day long, you will come out of it as fresh as you entered it. These seats really are very good for cushioning as well as relaxation. Well, in terms of utility places, you get these two big bottle holders over here. You also get this huge box where you can keep your cell phone and your wallet. And you also get big door bins which are good enough to house those big 1 liter bottles from your home. And at the moment, I'll just have a sip from this fancy looking bottle from a nice restaurant. Let's see if the back seat is as good as the front ones now. Well, the back seat of the XC60 is just as impressive as the front ones, and if you are someone who prefers to be chauffeur driven all day long, you will really enjoy the experience over here. These seats are very sumptuous in terms of cushioning and overall support, and they are just as relaxing as the front seats are on this car. Now, knee room is more than adequate, and headroom also is pretty good. 6-footers should not have any issues inside this car. And it is also a pretty wide car at the back, which means that you can generally house 3 occupants over here. Now, there is a bit of a lump in the floor panel, but it's not a very wide lump. It's a tall lump, which means that whoever's sitting here will have plenty of place to keep his feet. And the footwells also are pretty accommodating for the passenger, whoever will be sitting here. What also adds to a sense of luxury is the fact that you get your own AC vents not only here in the center, but also here in the pillars. And you also get your own climate control zones at the back. So overall, an excellent place to be in. In fact, it can easily rival a lot of sedans at this price point for sheer space as well as luxury. The XC60 really is a fantastic place for backseat comfort. Well, not only is the XC60 a great car for luxury and comfort, it's also a great car for practicality. As you can see, this car has got a massive boot. It is a very impressive boot in terms of its shape and size. There isn't any loading lip, which means that you can simply slide in and slide out very expensive and very heavy bags. And this car really is very good at that airport transfers. In fact, it's a great car for picking up your mother-in-law and even dropping her back, because the boot space really is massive. So all her luggage can go in this car without any issues. What's more, if you want to increase the luggage carrying capacity, all you need to do is simply press these buttons over here, and the backrest go down, and you get a completely flat load area with no intrusion whatsoever. And if you think that this car is really high up and want to lower it down, you can always press these buttons, and it'll make it even easier to load than it already really is. And because it is a Volvo car, you don't have to put any effort into even closing the boot lid. All you need to do is simply press this button, and the boot lid will close on itself. So an excellent car for overall practicality. Well, so here I am driving the Volvo XC60. Now, there's only one engine option on sale. That's a 2-liter diesel engine, which makes about 235 bhp of power and about 480 Nm of torque. And this car uses an 8-speed automatic gearbox. Yes, there's an 8-speed automatic on offer, and it is a very crisp and a very nice gearbox, both in its automatic form as well as its manual version. When of course you use these pedal shifters over here, it is a nice and quick gearbox. Now, there's hardly any lag. In fact, there's no lag when you want to change gears. All you do is simply press this pedal over here, and gear shifts are done in an instant. It is that quick. Now, talking about lag or the lack of lag, Volvo engineers have really answered one of the biggest issues with all common rail engines, which is of course turbo lag below 2000 RPM. A lot of common rail engines feel very lazy and hesitant to respond to your inputs below 2000 RPM. Volvo has thought about that, and they've added a technology called Power Pulse. Now, what is it all about? Essentially, they use compressed air, or they have a chamber or a gas chamber right next to the engine, which throws in air into the turbo unit, and the turbo unit then keeps spooling regularly. Doesn't have to wait for the engine to cross 2000 RPM and then the air to spool in. It already has air inside it at good pressures, and that helps the engine feel more responsive and develop its power lower in the power band. And yes, it is a technology that truly does work. This car does start responding from about 1500-1600 RPM, which is much better than all its other rivals, which only start responding after 2000 RPM. So yes, it is a good technology, and it's a technology which other car manufacturers should also start adopting. Now, not only is this diesel engine very responsive, it's also hugely refined. In fact, the cabin is so well isolated from the diesel engine noise outside that most occupants will actually feel that they've got the petrol car. This car does not feel like a diesel. When you are cruising on the highway and doing speeds of say about 80 or 90 kph, the engine is spinning at a very relaxed 1500 RPM, and there's hardly any noise which enters the cabin. There's no wind noise, there's no tire noise, and there's no diesel noise to talk about. So yes, it is a great car for those long distance trips, and this cabin really does cocoon you from the world outside, just like the bigger XC90 does. Well, now there's a lot of safety kit on this car, including lane departure warning and lane departure assist and stuff like that, as well as blind spot warning. Now, what that lane departure warning or lane departure assist essentially does is that it detects that you are moving away from your lane ever so slightly. If you are, of course, someone who weaves around a bit, then it will notice that, and it will send a vibration into the steering wheel just to warn you to get back in your lane and to be driving safely. That's an excellent feature, but I think in a country like India, it might be a bit of an overkill, and the system might really work over time, and most people might just switch it off because for them it might be a little too intruding. But overall, it is a very good system and something which really does aid safety by a long way. Well, what you'll also like about the XC60 is its ride quality. Yes, you can choose the various settings over here. You can choose comfort, economy, dynamic or off-road mode, but in comfort mode, this car really glides over the worst of worst road conditions. Yes, those patchwork roads, those expansion joints, those rumble strips do not cause any issues for this car. This car simply glides over them. It feels as if this car is actually running on a cushion of air or driving on a cushion of air, and it is something which is very good, and I would say that this car's ride comfort is the best in this segment. It is definitely ahead of all its other rivals. Well, one more thing which the XC60 does very well is that it does mask its speed very well. This car has a tendency to really hide its speeds, so you've got to be constantly looking at the speedometer to know what speeds you're doing, because before you know it, you might be doing illegal speeds on highways and be caught out by the cops and have to pay heavy fines. So you've got to be careful with your right leg, and also constantly keep a lookout for that speedometer, because the refinement levels are so good you won't even know when you're doing speeds in excess of 110, 120 kph, and that could mean a heavy fine when you're driving on most Indian highways. Now, talking about steering wheel feedback, it is a nice and light steering wheel. It's not overtly feel-some, but that said, it's a pretty accurate steering wheel. It is a steering wheel which does its job quite well, and most buyers who buy these kind of cars buy them more for their comfort and for their image rather than for any sporty pretensions. And the Volvo really does not have any sporty pretensions, so to say. They really are erring on the side of comfort and want to offer you the best of comfort and luxury rather than sporty handling, and in that department, this car truly does excel. But that's not to say that there isn't any fun to be had inside the XC60. In fact, keen drivers will be quite okay with its dynamic abilities, because the chassis of this car feels pretty dynamic. If you are someone who will be taking it up the hills and pushing it into corners occasionally, then there is some fun to be had, because the body roll is always under control. The grip level from the tires is absolutely brilliant, and the brakes on this car are also very good. They have solid bite, and the brake pedal also has very good feel to it. So overall, it is pretty decent in terms of the sporty or the dynamic department. But yes, it does excel at being a comfortable cruise machine rather than being a sporty handler. Well, most buyers will also like the fact that this car is very easy to drive. It's not a cumbersome car to drive. It doesn't feel its girth. It really does mask its girth quite nicely. And most people who tend to drive their cars themselves will be quite okay with the XC60 in the city, because the controls are light. You get excellent visibility all across, and you get plenty of sophisticated features to ensure that you park it into a tight space. You get plenty of warning systems. So yes, driving this car in the city is really a pleasurable affair. So overall, what do I think about the XC60? I think it is a great luxury SUV. In fact, I would say that at this price point, this is the best luxury SUV that you can buy. Not only does it offer you great driving dynamics and comfort, it also offers you this phenomenal features list, as well as this wonderful Bowers & Wilkins stereo system. And this system alone really is the deal maker on this car. It really is a phenomenal system, along with, of course, that long and very exhaustive safety features list. You should definitely go ahead and check this car out at a Volvo dealership near you. Well, don't think of the XC60 as just another rival to some established German manufacturers, but actually think of it as a slightly downsized version of the XC90, but with the same engine, the same phenomenal features, as well as safety kit, but at a much more affordable price tag. Yes, this really is 90% of the XC90 at about 75% of the cost, making it a no-brainer. It really is a sensational luxury SUV, and if you're in the market for a car like this, then this is probably the best choice out there. It's bye for now, and hope to see you soon.